Excuse me. All right, out there, YouTube. It just dawned on me that there are a lot of my collection that we haven't really looked at. I haven't really touched on any of my Spydercos yet. I mean, a couple, but not. There's a few key ones that I haven't touched on. First off, let me start out by saying I apologize. I recognize that my audio quality in all of these videos has been hot garbage. I'm trying out a couple of new things fairly regularly, but we'll see how this one goes because I don't edit any of this and I don't really know how to edit any of this, so which would explain a lot, I imagine. So today I'm going to talk about the Spyderco Manix 2. Now this is my Manix 2, obviously, that I have made my own. S30V, G10 scales. These are aftermarket G10 scales. Got them off of eBay. Flytanium ball cage assembly. Ni anode, the screws, the lanyard collar, the liners, the back spacer, pocket clip, all myself. So let's take a quick look at the Manix 2. Manix 2 is coming in just short of 8.5 inches, with a blade length right at 3.5 inches and the cutting edge right about 3.25, maybe just under 3.25. The Manix 2 in this condition, which isn't really far off of its normal, weighs 5.02 ounces, so we'll say 5 ounces. We'll compare the Manix 2 to the usual suspects, starting with the Kershaw Leak. Manix 2 is not surprisingly much larger. The Benchmade Bug Out. The Manix 2 in terms of length is a bit longer. I know, I'll keep that out there. Probably the best physical comparison. The Spyderco Tenacious, which is very much similar size to the Manix 2. And the Paramilitary 2, which is also very similarly sized. So this is a full-size knife. Like I said before, S30V, G10 scales. I love this knife. I think that goes without saying. I mean, it checks all the boxes. Modern, updated lockup system, thumb hole, 3.5 inch blade length, G10 scales. Just an amazing action on it. I love this knife. Without a doubt, one of my favorites. I mean, I feel like I say that about every one of my knives, just about. But I really do. This is much preferred. And I just like the way it looks after I refinished it. Just looks all clean and elegant. Like if royalty had to carry a Spyderco, this would be the one. I don't really know what else to say about it. S30V G10. There's a fairly strong aftermarket for it. Most of your paramilitary 2 scales will fit on this. Titanium has titanium scales in the ball cage lock lever. I mean, there's a fairly strong aftermarket on this. Not as strong as a PM2, let's say, but it's fairly strong. It's just a really, really fun knife. The one thing I will say about this knife that keeps it from being my absolute favorite is, and this is actually something that I'm walking back from on the Benchmades. When we're talking about some of my favorite things, I'm going to bring these 2 out for an example, or actually 3 out. When we're talking about some of my favorite things, one of the key factors of a knife for me is its ease of maintenance. How hard is it to take apart, put back together, so that I can, if the action starts to feel a bit dirty or grimy, I can take it apart, clean it up, put it back together. Liner locks are actually quite simple. You pull out the screws, pull out the body, pull out the pivot, pull out the body screws, and it just opens up for you. Everything's right there. Compression locks, they're basically, at its most basic denominator, just liner locks on the spine. Compression locks, also super easy. Take the pivot out, take the body screws out, and it opens up and it's all for you right there. While I love the Axis lock and all its other types, its other names and forms, like Hoag's Able lock and SOG's XR lock, while I love it, it is not the easiest lock type to work with. Not impossible, not overly difficult, but it's substantially more difficult than a liner lock or a frame lock. And while I think that the ball bearing or cage lock that the Manix has is a sturdier, more reliable lockup type than the Axis lock, it is every bit as difficult to work with, because that little spring and that little ball bearing are not going to cooperate with you when you're putting this back together. And there is definitely a process to do it. You have to put in this part and then this part and then that part, or that spring's going to launch itself across a room, or that ball bearing's going to fall out, bounce off the counter and down to the floor. It is not a simple system to work on relative to Axis locks, frame locks, and compression locks. And there is something to be said for ease of maintenance, which is why I love the Axis lock. But all that said, back to the Manix 2, it's kind of a booger to take apart and put back together, but I absolutely adore this knife. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it. That forward choil gives you multiple grip positions, and it is just a clean, smooth action. Fantastic knife. If you're in the market, if you're interested in a Manix 2 and just need one more person to say go do it, I'm your man. Go do it, because that is a great knife. If you guys have any comments or questions, leave them down in the comment section below. Y'all have a great evening.